This is the BBC.
Welcome to the Verb, and I said that in the here and now, which instantly became the there and then, because the present is always becoming the past, and there's nothing we can do about it, even on Radio 3, even on BBC Sounds. But what of the future, the final book in the trilogy of past, present and... where's it hiding, and how can we think about it and possibly alter its trajectory? But first, the future in the past, in 1965, when I was 9 and very excitable.
This is BBC One.
Part of tomorrow's world today, the world of robots and now of mobots, of plastic skirts and paper shirts, the world of dialing 9 for a drink. But let's start with today's world, the world of blackites, or at any rate, reduced power, which produces the kind of light you might expect from a muscular glowworm.
That was an extract from the great BBC television programme Tomorrow's World, which always made me optimistic about the future. The poetry of Raymond Baxter's delivery there, mobots and robots, plastic skirts and paper shirts. It's the future, written by a 60s beat poet. Utopias were everywhere. And today, not so much. In fact, the BBC, along with other broadcasters, has signed up to a climate pledge to make sure its visions of the future aren't simply dystopian. They're promising to recognise other visions, fair and balanced ones, sustainable and informed by the science. We thought this was such an exciting opportunity for new writing. So, in the first of what will be a series of visits to the future, we have 3 of the most thoughtful time travellers writing today. In the first half of the show, we're joined by the ecological philosopher and green activist Rupert Reed. And Rupert, do you feel any nostalgia, or are you captured by that little moment at the end of the clip where Baxter talks about the energy problems they were having then, and that amazing, again, poetic reference when he says, the light from a muscular glowworm?
Yeah, there's a fascinating juxtaposition there, isn't there, between this vision of endless progress, material growth, technological change going on forever, and the brutal realities that were starting to intervene. I remember Tomorrow's World when I was a kid, and it's fascinating to reflect on how implausible it all now seems. We now know that there isn't going to be this endless technological growth and progress. The future looks very different, and yeah, the question is how not to get plunged into despair about it.
That is the question, and I started off by talking about the climate change pledge that the BBC has helped to draft, recognising the importance of fair and balanced visions of a sustainable future, not just dystopian ones. And it implies, doesn't it, somehow that dystopia has taken us over. But what about a new genre? So Rupert, can you tell us about Thrutopia? This is your invention. What is Thrutopia, and how does it differ from dystopia or utopia?
Well, exactly. What I saw was that there was an enormous gap in the market, if you will, that utopias are no longer credible. Dystopias, fine, they're necessary because they're where we appear to be heading right now, but there's got to be a better way. So I came up with this idea of a Thrutopia. How do we get through what is coming in the best way possible and make sure that it isn't just dystopian? And for inspiration, I found chiefly the marvellous work of Ursula Le Guin. For instance, her magnificent utopian novel, The Dispossessed, where what she tries to do is to create an anarchist utopia. But what she finds, as it were, in the writing of the book, is that if you're going to have a utopia which really is a utopia, it's going to have to be continually remade. In other words, the great flaw at the heart of utopias and dystopias is that they're virtually always written as static.
Yes.
And what Le Guin realised is, no, it's got to be continually remade. It's a process. It's not an endpoint. And that's more true than ever now for us, because we're going to be going through a constant series of transformations in the coming years because of ecological decline and climate degradation. In the face of that, we have to transform back, as it were. We have to create a Thrutopia. We have to actually live it. But first, well, how about we start to imagine it?
So we're going to ask you throughout the programme for a number of seeds or tools for the listeners who might want to become Thrutopian writers, and this book by Ursula Le Guin is the first one of those. You're going to read us a bit where the characters Shevek and Takver are talking. He's a physicist, she's a marine biologist, and they both come from the moon of Anaris. And Anaris is called by Le Guin an ambiguous utopia, and it's contrasted in the books with a state in a world called Uras, which is capitalist and patriarchal. And in the section you're going to read, Shevek is talking to Takva. So let's hear it.
The way to see how beautiful Earth is to see it from the moon. The way to see how beautiful life is from the vantage point of death. That's all right for Uras. Let it stay off there and be the moon. I don't want it. But I'm not going to stand up on a gravestone and look down on life and say, oh, lovely. I want to see it whole right in the middle of it, here, now. I don't give a hoot for eternity. It's nothing to do with eternity, said Shevek, grinning, a thin, shaggy man of silver and shadow. All you have to do to see life as a whole is to see it as mortal. I'll die, you'll die. How could we love each other otherwise? The sun's going to burn out. What else keeps it shining? Ah, your talk, your damned philosophy. Talk? It's not talk. It's not reason. It's hands touch. I touch the wholeness. I hold it. Which is moonlight? Which is Takva? How shall I fear death? When I hold it, when I hold in my hands the light. Don't be proprietarian, Takva muttered.
I love that line, which is moonlight and which is Takva. You can see that Takva is really engaged in thinking about how we can appreciate our world now in the midst of everything. And Shevek is saying distance helps you see it better. But that line at the end of that section is so fascinating. Don't be proprietarian. So is Le Guin estranging us in the book from things that we take for granted, like owning property?
Absolutely. There's this magnificent invention of this concept of proprietarianism, which is what the people trying to live an anarchist utopia are above all against. And yeah, it's very, very directly a critique, a reflection, as it were, from a distant moon of our own world, and the offering of the possibility of a different way, a way of getting through the very tight constraints that the people on Anaris were under in the book.
And that is really, as we're talking about, what makes it Thrutopian. Let's hear Ursula Le Guin talking to the writer China Mieville about this novel for Radio 4 in 2009.
Everything we're talking about now was becoming common knowledge among scientists in the 60s, at least, and earlier, that what we were doing was leading to the complete degradation of natural resources and the oceans and the atmosphere. And that has been common knowledge for decades, and I was in no way pressing it. I was just using the warnings that the scientists kept putting out, and nobody was listening. So they were voices crying in the wilderness, and I was just crying with them.
So she was writing in the spirit of the BBC's climate change pledge, its promise to follow the science. So, Rupert, we have the idea of the Thrutopian story of the future, stories that can show us how we can and must constantly adapt. Let's think more about the structure of stories, adventures in particular. Exhibit B is the Soviet satellite launched in 1957, the Sputnik. I don't remember because I was launched in 1956, but I remember at school doing a project about the Sputnik and me becoming obsessed with the word. The word Sputnik is such a futuristic sounding word. I know it's a Russian word, but somehow it sounds like something dropping into the future. So what's the link, Rupert, between Sputnik and the Thrutopian mindset?
Yes, so Hannah Arendt, the political philosopher, wrote a very fine book called The Human Condition, and it begins with a meditation on the significance for us of having launched something into space. And I'll read it for you. She says this: in 1957, an Earth-born object made by man was launched into the universe, where for some weeks it circled the Earth according to the same laws of gravitation that swing and keep in motion the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. This event, second in importance to no other, not even to the splitting of the atom, would have been greeted with unmitigated joy if it had not been for the uncomfortable military and political circumstances attending it. But curiously enough, this joy was not triumphal. It was not pride or awe at the tremendousness of human power and mastery which filled the hearts of men who now, when they looked up from the earth towards the skies, could behold there a thing of their own making. The immediate reaction, expressed on the spur of the moment, was relief about the first step towards escape from men's imprisonment to the earth. And this strange statement, far from being the accidental slip of some American reporter, unwittingly echoed the extraordinary line which more than 20 years ago had been carved on the funeral obelisk for one of Russia's great scientists, quote, "Mankind will not remain bound to the earth forever," unquote. And so my reflection on that is that there is, as Arendt rightly suspects, something unhealthy about this idea of seeing the Earth as a kind of prison, this idea which you get reflected in some science fiction writing. And that if we're actually going to get serious about, well, Thrutopia, about flourishing through what is coming, we need to see this not as a prison, we need to see this as our one and only home, which we have to make the best of.
It makes me think of that poem by the Canadian World War II pilot John Gillespie Magee. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth, surly bonds, and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. I remember Ronald Reagan reading that poem in 1986 when the Challenger space shuttle broke apart, and it was somehow the idea that we have to escape the Earth. And you've written lots of film philosophy, Rupert, and is there a recent Thrutopian film ending which you use as an antidote to these Earth is a prison stories? Because I was thinking about when I was a kid, we were more or less implicitly told that it didn't matter if we messed the Earth up because we'd all be going to Neptune for our holidays, which is a version of what we've been talking about. So tell us about a film that might be a Thrutopian film.
Yeah, so the film I've written about the most in this context is Cuarón's magnificent film Gravity. And Gravity, well, the clue's right there in the title, really. It's about our tetheredness to Earth. There's this wonderful final line in Gravity where when she finally makes it onto the shore of the lake in which her returning spacecraft has crashed, she looks down at the Earth and she says, thank you. And it's as if she's saying thank you to the Earth for bringing her back, for bringing us back, which, of course, mirrors the rather wonderful fact that the most heroic story that we have about astronauts so far is the story of Apollo 13, which is not a story about going to the moon or going to other planets and boldly going where no one has gone before. It's a story about managing to get back to Earth. Films are an incredibly powerful, visceral way in which audiences can get to experience, in an imaginary way, the fantasy of exiting from this beautiful globe, this beautiful jewel. And to start to get back to grips again with the reality of how we're actually going to get through what is coming and enable that jewel to continue to be beautiful and continue to be the home for us earthborn people.
I often think that one of the risky things about experimenting with a new genre is, well, you think about something like the modernist novel. It takes time for the modernist novel to become established, and it can take you down a cul-de-sac. So should that be a worry for Thrutopians? Do Thrutopians have to write very quickly because of the urgency of the situation we find ourselves in?
That's a great question. The situation is urgent, and I work with artists and filmmakers and writers now who are finally catching on to this and who are throwing themselves into it. But the second part of my answer is, well, there also has to be space to slow down. My colleague, the philosopher Bayo Akomolafe, says, the times are urgent, let us slow down. Anything that is of true value takes time. The way in which our culture of obsessive progress and growth has shortened attention spans and made us all more short-termist, that is one of the most profound disasters of our time. If we are to get through what is coming, it will be because we are willing and able to think long-term again.
So, Rupert, is there a saying about the future you could give us a parting shot to any writers listening who are inspired, and they should be, to become Thrutopian?
I'd love to give you a quote from my teacher, Joanna Macy, someone who's been very important to many of us in terms of giving us a sense of how we can get through emotionally the difficulty of our time and the more difficult times still that are coming. Inevitably, whether it's a good thing or not, we are going to have to seek to be resilient in this time. So this is what Joanna Macy says about this time and about how we might approach it, if you will, poetically. She says this: there's a song that wants to sing itself through us. Maybe the song that is to be sung through us is the most beautiful requiem for an irreplaceable planet. Or maybe it's a song of joyous rebirth as we create a new culture that doesn't destroy its world. The future isn't out there in front of us, but inside us.
That was Rupert Reed ending the first part of this future-themed Verb on Radio 3.